Hi, I wanted to welcome you to the Divorce Planning Podcast. I'm Carri Goldring, and I'm in the mortgage business, and I do planning pre-divorce for people who are either going to refinance their home, do an equity buyout, or plan to purchase a new home and make sure that everything in the divorce decree is worded properly and the numbers in the planning is taken care of so that you can go through the underwriting process smoothly. And I would like to introduce you to other people who are interested in the divorce planning process so you can get a real education of what's involved. Hope you enjoy.
Hello and welcome back. I am happy to have with me Lori Buiteweg, who's a family law attorney, and I asked her to discuss with us child support and how it's calculated and what could make that number change or not change. So Lori, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome, Carri. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So tell us about child support and how does somebody calculate child support? I know you.
Well, it's really easy. You just buy this manual.
Oh, goodness.
And then you read it cover to cover, and then you'll have the answers to all of your questions.
Perfect. So
I'll bet you were looking for something a little more user-friendly than that.
Right. My vision is it's a computer program and you answer like 15 questions and it spits out an answer.
There are several computer programs. There is one that I believe the Michigan Supreme Court offers for free.
So there isn't one standard formula, which I guess I didn't realize. I thought child support was pretty standard, but.
Well, it is. I mean, you can deviate from it, but okay, so here's a website is www.michigan.gov/MI child support.
Thank you.
There's more than one out there. I presume any of them will do the job in terms of, coming up with a number. And the reason that it's helpful to have a program is because it will calculate the taxes in the background. And therefore, you don't have to do that, which like how even could you, right? So yeah, you're absolutely right. You probably don't want to use the book. You could if you were some genius, but you probably want to use one of the computer programs.
Okay, and then so are there standard inputs for the computer program that help determine the amount of support?
There are standard variables.
Okay.
The inputs aren't necessarily standard because people argue about them all the time, right?
Okay.
So I think you were saying to me before we started recording that sometimes lawyers would tell you there's like a range of child support and what might make the difference in the numbers that you're getting. So what you're going to need is how many children were born during the marriage. That hopefully we're not arguing about that. Although I suppose you could have one still in the womb, but then, the idea would be after that child is actually born, you would then add that child to the formula and you would modify the child support amount because now you have one more kid. And then number of remaining children from the marriage. So that is any child that is under the age of 18, hasn't graduated from high school, or over the age of 18, hasn't graduated from high school, but not yet 19 and a half and expected to still graduate from high school. So that's how many minor children remain.
What if they're not expected to graduate because maybe there's some special.
They don't go in the formula.
Okay, so there's no child support for them, or because they're going to be on Social Security at some point in time it changes?
I guess that's probably the thinking. Quite frankly, I have never in 35 years had one of those come up, but presumably you might. I think you're right, though. They're probably going to get SSI or something like that, Social Security income. So then you are going to your next job is, and this is where a lot of fighting comes up, is the parenting time, right?
Okay, yep.
And the overnight estimator. Now, it's interesting because in some cases, depending on the incomes, the relative incomes of the parties, the number of overnights doesn't move the needle a huge ton. But in other cases, it moves it a huge amount. And, I don't understand the algorithm enough to tell you why,
It's
but
like
you can.
credit scores. It seems like you see someone's credit score and they pay on time and everything looks good and they get one score and someone else gets a whole different score and you're like, I don't see the difference.
Okay, well, I'm glad we're not the only ones experiencing these anomalies. But you could have a case where 3 overnights makes a $500 a month difference. 3 overnights a year.
Oh, wouldn't that's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. But, and that's the unfortunate part, right? Is we don't want parents fighting for overnights just to move the needle on their child support. I mean, that
Right.
is totally not cool for the
But
kids'
it
sake,
seems like
right?
it happens often. Even on my end, I hear that a lot that someone wants, 50-50 because they don't want to pay more child support.
Yeah, and that's, come on, right? Do
Right.
what's best for the kid. And based on the best interest factors and the Child Custody Act and the parenting time factors, do what's best for the kid objectively. And whatever child support is, it is. Suck it up. It's not going to be forever, you know?
Right. And it's not a ton of money, it doesn't ever seem like either compared to someone's
I
income.
mean,
I mean,
even if it is, what are you going to do
chunk.
about it?
Right.
It's you're doing it for the sake of the kid. And so anyway, that's my preaching for the day about don't fight about your overnights, right?
Right.
Um, and then the next job you have is agreeing on what each party's income is, and there's lots of room to argue there as well.
Right.
In an easy case, you'll use W-2 income from the prior year. You'll use box 5, which is typically, it's the highest number you're going to see on the W-2 usually. And then you're also going to keep an eye out in case there might be like a car allowance down there lower on the W-2 or something like that. You don't want to add that car allowance to income. But you also want to look at the tax returns too, right? Because somebody might have a big, huge, fat trust that's separate property or something like that. And you may not be able to touch the trust money, the corpus, but the income that it throws off from interest and dividends and things like that, even capital gains, those can be added in for support purposes.
Okay, so
Um,
that's usually our biggest thing from a mortgage perspective too, is how is someone paid, right? Because you could have someone who's paid by mile, you can have someone who gets tips, someone who gets a lot of bonus or commission or hasn't been at their
yeah,
job very long, so they're not writing, they
right.
don't have a good history of something.
Yeah, and when there's a bonus, there's a couple ways to handle that. One way is to just always, look at the prior year's tax returns and whatever it was, it was. And people are like, well, wait, I might not get that much of a bonus, next year. Okay, well, the next year we're going to relook at the numbers. And if you didn't get as much, then your support's going to go down. So you'll do you could make it a retroactive modification and do some sort of a true up where you're either, getting, what you should have gotten in a lump sum to make up for, that, or maybe you're foregoing. And then the other way to handle it is that I think most lawyers kind of prefer, most parties prefer base child support on the base income, the base salary, and then do a percentage of the gross bonus or bonuses. And then you've also got cases where somebody might not just get a bonus, but they might also have like weird income, like they are, getting what do they call them, honorariums for being a speaker, somewhere. So, oh, well, I had one speaking engagement last year. I know, Carrie, you're paying me $25,000 for this podcast, so it'll show up on my tax returns.
Right. Would that be awesome if I could do that?
Just kidding. But, or maybe I have like 10 engagements or something like that. So, that you might say, well, any income over the base salary, or maybe you might get merit pay, or you might get commissions or whatever. So, you can do it that way. And I think the reason people prefer it is because the payee is getting that bump at the same time that the payor is getting it. And the payor isn't having to pay a higher amount all year long based on kind of an unknown estimate. One of the things that I've been complaining about a lot over the years to the folks who, create this program, and I love them dearly, and there's apparently no way to fix this, but more and more couples, both of them, have bonus income.
There's
Right?
very rarely a family that has all straight W-2 income anymore.
Yeah, and more I see where both the husband and the wife, the mom and the dad, have either bonus or commission, and there's no way to put in the payee's bonus amount into the formula, only the payors, right? So what do you do? Yeah, it is weird, but apparently it can't be fixed. So I'm told. So, what do you do in that case? I mean, you have some options. You could just use whatever the same percentage is for the payor. Say the payor is paying 9% of gross over 200,000 a year in income. And maybe you say, okay, well, and if the payee gets anything over their 150,000 a year, they're going to subtract 10% of that from what they're supposed to get from the payor, like do a set off.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, we can get complicated.
Right. We have that in the mortgage world. Now we have an underwriter even on staff that looks at income prior to us even taking a mortgage application. So before you would make mortgage application and turn everything into underwriting for approval, and now we collect all the tax returns, pay stubs, and everything ahead of time, give it to an underwriter to determine what income is going to be used for the mortgage, and then send somebody either house hunting or qualifying for a refinance or whatnot, because it is getting so complicated. And then the IRS looks at it one way, you guys look at it a different way, we look at it a different way, and it gets even more.
Yeah, I think the biggest conundrum, I'd call it, between your world and mine is this issue of when do we stop paying bills from both parties' incomes? When do we end the status quo and flip to you pay your bills, I pay my bills, and we each keep our own incomes, and then we transfer cash flow or wealth by way of child support and or alimony.
Right. And we look at the legal, like what shows up on a credit report in terms
Right.
of debt. So if it's under your name and you are legally responsible to pay it, it's yours.
Yeah.
Until the divorce is final. And then if there's anything in the judgment that says so and so is 100% responsible for that debt, we can remove it from our calculations, even though legally, they're still obligated if there's an issue, right? But we can remove it from our end. So if it says spouse one is 100% responsible to pay the American Express bill, I won't count it as part of my debt.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then child
That
support,
doesn't mean that they're not going to be on the hook if their name is on the American Express bill.
Correct.
But
Right, 'cause
yeah,
we know legally they were still responsible, but because you have that judgment, we can ignore it.
well, that's good to know.
And
I think
then,
why it's a conundrum is because oftentimes the payee is better off dragging out the status quo, quite frankly. and
Right.
not flipping over to support. But the longer they wait to flip to support, the longer they have to wait to qualify for their mortgage.
Right, if you need it for sure, because you either need to receive for 3 months or 6 months, depending on what loan program you're on, and then it has to continue for 3 years after they close on their mortgage. So it's not just
Right.
a 3 year term, but it could be the 6 months plus the waiting period, then you get the mortgage, and then the 3 years. So it becomes a lot longer in terms of a stretch of when someone needs to receive it. But yeah, the income is getting trickier and trickier as time goes on.
Yep.
So
Yep. The
what other
income is,
inputs are in there?
well, health insurance and, whoever's paying that. Now, that's interesting because I've had cases where people argue, I want to put the kids on my health insurance, and the other person says, no, I want to put them on mine. Um, and sometimes it's because of how much it costs out of pocket. Sometimes it's because they want to keep the same providers and don't want to switch.
Right. Sometimes
Sometimes
you
it's
just
a
want the bills and to have control over paying them and what
yeah, it's a
insurance is
control issue
covering.
sometimes. Yeah. So the way the friend of the court policy is that whoever has, again, sort of prompts fighting over parenting time, whoever has more parenting time gets to put the kids on their insurance if they want to.
Is there anything regarding car insurance now and who covers children on car insurance? Or that does
There,
only health
there is
insurance?
not. I think that's considered to be an item that if you want to provide it for your child and you're receiving child support, you can choose to use your child support to pay that. If you're the payer of child support and you want to provide it, you reach in your pocket and you provide it
Anymore
on top of
because
child
it's
support.
not like a needed item like health insurance is more of a
And I'm
need.
sure every parent on the planet would say that's very arguable, right? Like
Right, of course, because
most
your
of us
kids are
are
going to
like,
drive.
yeah, we kind of fear our kids getting their driver's license a lot and also want them to get them at the same time
Right.
so
And if
that
you were
they
married, most likely they would get their license, they would drive, and it would be covered under the family insurance policy.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean it's along the lines of extracurricular activities and stuff like that. I mean, there's really no, I mean, the way I always look at it is, say, for example, you have all the parenting time except for like every other weekend and one night a week. You're getting a lot of child support because you have so many overnights, right? I think you ought to be more, responsible for more of the kids' expenses because of that. Although, the child support program spits out what each party's net income is after the transfer of child support and payment of taxes. So, that's telling also. If you look at that number and it's pretty equal, and then, maybe there's an argument for splitting car insurance, right?
Right. Interesting.
Equally. Yeah. Or you do pro rata based on what the post child support net income is. So
So much to,
sometimes people also argue about like once you decide whose health insurance is going to apply, like, so much money comes out of your paycheck, right? For
right.
health insurance. How do you parse it out so that you're only taking into consideration the cost for the kids? I think I'm not sure every friend of the court does it the same, but last I knew in my county, Washtenaw County, they would say if there's 5 people in the family, but after the divorce there's going to be 4, there's 3 kids and one parent, and it's going to costs $200 a month to insure one parent and 3 kids. You're
Right.
going to take four, how much did I say? 200 divided by 4 is 50, and then you're going to times it by 3. So you're going to put 150 in there. Sometimes you can get the HR department to show you, in a chart, you can go on your
Right.
employer portal and see what, one adult minus plus kids is versus one adult only and subtract those and use the difference. But people can get, hung up on that. They can get hung up on, tax dependency exemptions. which, look at the tax code and see if it really even makes a difference.
And that's part of the child support thing?
Yeah, you have to say
Who's
who's
claiming?
getting the kids as dependency exemptions, but it may not even matter because, the tax code
Or you might not
has
get the credit because you make too much money or something. And does it
there's
allow you to say we're going to do it every other year or this one gets it
you
all the
can
time?
alternate, right?
Oh, that's good.
And who's going to get head of household. I mean, you can play around with it, and that's one reason why your clients might be saying that their attorney gave you a range. Maybe they said, oh, under if I put you as head of household and taking both kids or three kids or whatever, this is how much you get if I give it to him, if I split it. So that can make a little bit of a difference too.
There's so much.
Oh, and I haven't even gotten started, but this is probably as much time as you want to spend, right?
Yeah, as otherwise I think I'm going to overwhelm everybody. But yeah, I think I even thought it was much simpler than what you're explaining.
Well, I
So
don't
I'm
want to
glad I did
overwhelm
this.
people.
No, but
Yeah,
I'm
I don't
glad
want,
it's important, I think, for people to know this because it's not very often that I would say that quote unquote general normal attorney is going to sit and go over all the inputs and all the implications and all, no one's going to pay your fee to sit and go through all this stuff. So I don't think a lot of it gets explained well when you're going through a divorce. I think, someone's asking you questions and you're giving answers, and those answers are the answers. So you're not you specifically, but an attorney's you're plugging them in, and you have a little variance here and there. But I don't think anyone ever digs deep.
well, it depends on the income level, the type of income. Certainly when you've got, people who are receiving stock as part of their compensation, that gets pretty complicated. I mean, if you have a simple case and two people are just getting W-2 paychecks, you can probably go on the Michigan Legal Help, website and try to
That's what
figure
she
some things out on your own. But and depending how old your kids are, maybe if you've got a 17-year-old and a 16-year-old,
It's not worth it.
it's not worth it for you. Like maybe, you work it out with your spouse and like you do some sort of deviation because you can ask the court to deviate from the child support formula under certain circumstances because it's just such a short amount of time left. But if you have a couple of elementary school kids or a lot of elementary school, four
Right, then
kids
it
in
makes a big
elementary school,
difference. Right,
yeah,
it
I
makes a big
mean,
difference.
having an attorney help you figure this out could end up over time making a pretty big difference.
Right, I believe it does. Every time I talk to an attorney and I do the podcast or I'm having a regular conversation, the fact that some people attempt to do this on their own blows my mind. Like, I don't know how that's even possible.
Well, I think most people are smart enough not to perform medical procedures on themselves. Why
Right.
they think giving themselves legal advice is any different is a mystery to me. And certainly AI has its good and its bad things, but
Right, it
I
does.
cannot tell you how many people come to me with beliefs based on what they find on AI that
I get that
at
too.
best have a little shred of truth or value, but like what? Like, I mean, they're not full-blown hallucinations, right? But
Right, but
they're
it's true. I even went on AI the other day where I was asking something about a stock distribution and it gave me an answer like that the day you disperse, you have to add, you know, 2 days or whatnot to figure out the interest. And I'm like, well, hasn't there been a law update on that? And they're like, oh, yes, good point. It's only 1 day now. And I'm like, I'm correcting AI. That's not a good sign. You know?
well, that's I guess how it learns. So the next person will get it the right answer, but at least you knew, right?
Right, and that's the hard part. Like, I think it's good if you already know your subject, but if you don't know your subject, I'm not so sure that's the place to get
Amen. I agree with
information.
that. I
So
agree with
interesting.
that.
I thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
your time.
Anytime.
If anyone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to find you?
My phone number is 734 994 3000. My email address is my last name, which is on the screen there, Buiteweg at nssSB.com. Nichols, Sachs, Slank, Sundelbach, and Buiteweg.com. And we also have another partner named Solomon, but it's too long. It's too many initials to have NSSSBS, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
You need it to be like 4 quadrupled, to the 4th power.
Right.
Perfect.
So just call the office, or you can find me on, Google, just Google me. Our firm's website will pop up and you can contact me through
wonderful.
that.
You gave a lot of wonderful information, and I really, really thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I'm Carri Goldring, and if you ever have any questions regarding mortgage, feel free to give me a call or send me a text message, 248-420-4524. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.